Hello and welcome back to another Blu-ray review. This is the halfway point, the third of probably 5 videos now on the Eureka release of 4 Universal horror-ish films, hidden gems of the 30s and 40s, creeping horror. And we're now on the third film in the set, moving over to the second disc. And that film from 1941 is entitled Horror Island. So let's take a look at the individual artwork there on the inside reversible sleeve. I don't know why my voice went up then when I said reversible sleeve, but there you go. On the inside reversible sleeve. So Horror Island, yes. First of all, before I get into Horror Island, I got a slight criticism of this set. I do. And I'm going to voice it. So we start off with Murders in the Zoo, which is 1933. And this is kind of going in order of like, you put the Blu-ray in, and then there's the 2 films on either side of the screen, and you would naturally work from left to right? And then the button on play is on the first one on the left. So Murders in the Zoo, 1933, Night Monster, 1942, and then when you go to the second disc, it's Horror Island in 1941, and then finally House of Horrors, 1946. So it's kind of out of order chronologically. And that bugs me. Anyway, moving swiftly on. It's a completely pedantic point, but it just made me think, why? And I was thinking, are they pairing the films because Horror Island and House of Horror, is that the what they're going for? But no, I don't think that's really it. Anyway, it is what it is. Horror Island, 1941. This film, God, I got so much to say about it in a way. And I don't want to get myself too bogged down in either of my opinions of it, because on the one hand, I loved this film. Loved it. And on the other hand, I have a really big problem with it. So it's just one of those things where I don't want to harp on too much about either of those two viewpoints that I have that's very conflicting. This is directed by George Wagner, who also this year in 1941 made The Wolfman, and certainly that's one of the more classic Universal monster movies, but this is a kind of a B picture and more of a murder mystery than a horror film, even though the title Horror Island evokes kind of, well, my mind jumps straight to Island of Lost Souls and kind of things like that, where you do get the feeling of some genuine terror, but it's a light-hearted film. There isn't any real genuine kind of horror in it, I don't think. But, it is one of those things. So, again, where do I start? Okay, so the story, very simply, we have this man who owns a little kind of boating business near a local dock. The location isn't very specific, but this guy's played by Dick Ferran as Bill Martin, and Bill Martin is this likable character. He kind of reminded me a little bit of George Clooney, really. I don't know, something about this. There's a Clooney-esque feel to his performance and mannerisms, and there's kind of a natural charm to Dick Ferran, which I found really enjoyable to watch. And he's a bit kind of he's out on his luck a little bit. There's a moment where he's been given a bill by his cohort, his sidekick, if you will, Stuff, which is a great name for a character, just Stuff. He's saying, well, we got all these bills that are piling up. He's like, well, we're gonna file the bills where we normally do, and just throws them out the window. So he's in debt. The only thing he really has going for him is this kind of local boat business, which isn't really thriving. But he does own, through inheritance, an island out at sea, and no one's really interested in it. It's kind of a dead property, really. So as we open the film, and the film gets right into it, it's another one of those films like an hour long. The first thing we actually see in the film is this character played by Leo Carrillo. And they mentioned in the audio commentary that he was very specific about how he wanted his name pronounced, and I'm sure I'm not getting it perfectly correct, but I would read it off the page as Leo Carrillo, but it's Carrillo. So this character is called Tobias Clump. I don't think that name is ever said in the movie, but either way, he is a great character. I loved this. What would you call him beside? Just the name Tobias Clump. He's got a touch of like a Douglas Fairbanks. He's got that kind of there's a really flavorful personality inside this guy. And he had a fairly long career. He was known very well as Pancho in the Cisco Kid movies, and then on television became like that was where the character really took off, and so he was a very likable, lovable kind of notable actor of that period, especially when the TV show picked up. But anyway, this guy who comes in with a peg leg, he is here to find Bill Martin because he knows that Bill Martin owns this island, and he has a treasure map that leads to 20 million. And so right from the get-go, first 5 minutes, you've got this setup of there's this potential buried treasure, hidden treasure on this island. And, it's one of those movies where there's a destination or there's an event, and you get a group of different characters, and it's usually very different types of characters. And you group them all together, and then you send them off to that destination, to that event. And in this case, it's this island. And so Bill gets the bright idea to kind of promote the island as like a haunted island, and he's got this bright idea where he's gonna bring in some money, $50 a head, to come on the boat, come over to this haunted castle, and him and stuff are gonna rig it up with all this kind of spooky nonsense. And of course, when we get there, real life stuff starts happening, and it's quite fun when you get there, and all the stuff that Bill and stuff primarily has kind of set up to kind of spook the guests, and then actual outside forces come in, and then you don't know, well, what's real and what's not, because us as the audience is seeing it, but the characters may be a bit confused, including Bill and stuff themselves, when there's moments of humor where Bill's like, well stuff, why did you do this? And stuff's like, well, I didn't set that one up, I wasn't there at the time. So I feel like I'm doing a bad job of summarizing the movie. That sometimes it just clicks when I'm trying to, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like it isn't right now. But the basic premise of the film I really enjoyed, but it really thrives on the characters. I really liked Dick Ferran, very likable lead in Bill Martin. Leo Carrillo, I just loved his charisma. He's such a fun character to watch on screen. He's just a real adventurous type. Again, just jumps off the screen. He's got a great face, which they even say in the commentary for the film. But I was disappointed when he kind of drops out of the film almost entirely for a good chunk of it. He pops up in the third act again, but I was like, oh, it's kind of a shame. And they kind of explain that, and we'll talk about that in another video and stuff. I don't want to get bogged down too much in information about this film overall and stuff that came from the commentary. But what I loved about the film was the characters, the setting, and it's so impressive, this film, when you find out, and this is where I will talk a little bit about the behind the scenes actually, because it's stunning to me how well this film plays, considering the incredibly short amount of time in which it was made and released. So filming for Horror Island, directed by George Wagner, began on the 3rd of March 1941. It wrapped filming on the 15th of March, 1941, which is, some 12, 13 days later. The film then premiered in cinemas on the 28th of March, 1941. We're talking about a turnaround of cameras rolling and that final film being in theaters within the calendar month of March, 1941. Staggering. Like, I talked in my Night Monster review about how I was amazed that film was made in 13 days. That really just seems like the norm at this point in time. And again, I'll talk about it a little bit more in a future video, but in the extras, they go into like the studio systems and how Universal at this point in time were churning out films on a production line at such an incredible rate. And it was about low costs and, just pumping out movies, just high quantity, and maybe not so much focus on the quality. And that's where I think this film suffers a little bit, because what I loved about it was the characters, the setting. The dialogue is great. There's really funny stuff in this. And I do want to mention one of my favorite characters in the film is played by Peggy Moran, and she plays this young woman called Wendy Creighton. And Wendy gets wrapped into the whole excursion, but there's a romantic kind of, tension and playfulness between her and Bill Martin, but I thought she just had real life to her. And I'm finding this with these old Universal movies, is that there's really strong female actresses. Not even so much the characters, but they really just liven up proceedings. And she was so good in this film, and I really liked her chemistry with Dick Ferran, Peggy Moran, and Dick Ferran. And there's Fuzzy Knight, who plays Stuff, Bill's sidekick, who is just so fun to watch, and he has many memorable little lines. And you know, as I was talking about the writing being so good, Peggy Moran's delivery of some of the more, you know, the sarcastic lines were fantastic, and there's just really good jokes in there. And you know, I just I thought there was so much about the film that it had going for it, from the characters to the premise, which is fairly, you know, routine, I suppose. But when you have characters you really enjoy watching, then, you know, maybe a plot that you've seen before doesn't matter too much. But then the film looks really good, you know, and obviously a lot of this stuff is sets that are used from other movies. It's not like they had to build all of this stuff for this. But the fact that they shot all of this in like under 2 weeks and then edited it in even less that time, staggering. But ultimately what you have, for me personally, is a great, like, first two acts of a movie. It's an hour long. Some of these films, you know, they're like, you know, they're an hour, hour 5, hour 10, hour 15. And I know for me personally, I know a lot of the people are the same. Some may not be. But the older you get, the less time you have to watch movies, right? And other kind of adult commitments get in the way and stuff. And so when you want to watch a film, you got like 2 hours to sit down and watch a movie. And you look at the running time and it's 2 hours, you're like, oh, you know, you look at the running time, it's 90 minutes, you're like, you know, you look at the running time and it's 65 minutes, you're like, oh, yes. You know, it's just kind of like, great, we can kind of watch the movie and not stress. You know what I mean? It's just like when you have a specific window of time, you want to be able to pause and get up and go to the toilet or get another drink or whatever it is. And so seeing that this film was an hour long, great. I can just spin it through and I'll be done in an hour. That's great. But I really wanted another half an hour from this film. And I could have easily gone for maybe a bit more than that as well, because I love the characters so much if they've expanded the intrigue of this. And there is good intrigue. There's a mysterious couple who come along. They kind of turn up unannounced, so we haven't been introduced to them previously. A very shady looking couple, and they keep talking privately, like, you know, when are we going to get started, you know? And, you know, well, not just yet, you know. And it ultimately doesn't lead anywhere that interesting, but I love the intrigue of that shit. It's very simple writing where it hooks the audience in, and it hooked me in where I was like, wait, what are they waiting to get started? Like, so I like that stuff. And it's just, you know, it kind of, you know, let's wrap everything up in a neat little package at the end. And the reveal of who the killer was and the whole plot and everything kind of tying up at the end was well done, but fairly rushed. And I just would have liked to see more. And as I said, maybe my favorite character of the film was Leo Carrillo as Tobias Clump. But, you know, he kind of vanishes for a bit in the movie, and they theorize in the audio commentary that perhaps he was off making another movie at that time. And it was very likely why he didn't resurface for a little bit in the movie, because they were just churning them out so much. And Peggy Moran even referred to this as one of many 2-week pictures that she would make. But this was one that was particularly strenuous on her, and she, you know, broke down crying, you know, nights after filming, because she was so exhausted from the very long days, because they're making a film in 2 weeks. So it's highly concentrated, very long days. But she said these were long days and long nights. And she was so exhausted she could barely eat dinner at the end of the day. And then, you know, she'd be crying to her mum about how, you know, tired she was. So, you know, it was not an easy life for some of these actors. And then there are other people who just play bit parts. And as they say in the audio commentary, they rack up hundreds of film roles over their career. But Horror Island, it was charming. It was really charming. You have like there's also the Phantom character, this quasi villain of sorts, played by Foy Van Dolsen. He was, you know, kind of he reminded me a bit of Boris Karloff. Not even that he looks like him, but just the figure that he cut with the cape and everything. It felt like a part that Boris Karloff might have played. And also there's a particularly interesting moment where he is he's spying on Wendy there, you know.
He's a peeping Tom.
Yeah, the Phantom's a peeping Tom. Anyway, I would also like to give a strange shout out to the actor called Lewis Howard, who plays Thurman Coldwater, or as Stuff once once calls him Mr. Icewater. But yeah, it's a weird name really when you think about it. But Thurman Coldwater is this strange character who's with Wendy. I don't know if he's meant to be her boyfriend or not, but he tags along with her on the excursion. And he just has this very sardonic kind of demeanor about him. And he really reminded me of Otho in Beetlejuice. And there's just a particular clip here that I'll play, and maybe you'll see where I'm coming from. But either way, it's kind of, it sums up the character, I think.
Hello, Yorick. Find your own bed, will you?
And he probably has like maybe 90 seconds of screen time, maybe 2 minutes. He's not in the film very much, but he really, I don't know, he was really entertaining in the very short amount of time that he was there. And his backstory, holy moly, like, and we'll talk about that in the final video of this run of reviews on the set, because his story is a very tragic one. They talk about it in the audio commentary. Anyway, Horror Island, I love the characters. I really enjoyed this film. It looks really good. Like, there's a real atmosphere to it, you know. And I love the Tobias Klump character, his introduction to, you know, the main characters and stuff, where he falls into the docks and they fish him out and they think that his actual leg has gone missing until they realize it's a wooden leg, and he's hidden the treasure map inside the wooden leg, and he's like, oh, this leg is made out of a piano, you know, and he says he'd rather lose his real leg than his wooden one, you know.
I would rather lose my good one than that one, eh? Solid mahogany. I carved it myself out of an old piano. Very musical. Every time someone plays the spring song, it gets a touch of sciatica or rheumatism.
So he's just such a great character, and the dialogue was witty and fun, and the reveal of the kill is a bit goofy and doesn't quite make as much sense as maybe it could have, but it's just an entertaining, fun film. I just wish it was longer, but now that I know it was shot in under 2 weeks, edited and released in under 2 weeks, mind blown. And one final thing, just a completely random note. Doesn't this little piece of music, which crops up I think twice in the film, remind you of the Danny Elfman Batman music? So not like the main theme, with just that, but not quite. You know, this is an interesting one, and I thought, oh, the music composed for this film, you know, maybe Danny Elfman saw this movie when he was a kid, but then I realized that music was very much likely lifted from another movie because they made this in under a month. So God knows what the source of that piece of music is or anything, but incredibly impressive for how quickly they put this thing together. I just think, God, the possibilities if they had a little bit more time and a little bit more, you know, well, I don't even need to say more care and attention, because I think that they pulled off a really good film with such incredible limitations when you really think about it. So, yeah, this is one I'll go, but this is one I'm already excited about going back to. It's like a comfort movie kind of enjoyment to me, where I just really, I can't wait to go back and spend some more time with those characters. And yeah, so I love this one. And it's probably my favorite of the set, even though I don't think it's the best film of the set. So that's all for Horror Island. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next review from this set, which will be the film House of Horrors. And then we'll wrap up after that with a final video talking about the Blu-ray as a whole and kind of reviewing that and going back a little bit to some things I missed that I want to talk about in some of the other films. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.